name's Laura from Ireland, and I am a social media manager slash consultant. I'm also a podcast host who is just stepping back into the podcasting world again. Um, I'm also an office manager and I am also a yoga teacher. So I have a couple of hats that I wear throughout my working week. But all in all, the things that bring me the most joy is that I'm a dog mom, I'm a fiance, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, like I'm all these other things as well. So there's many variations of who I am. I'm a friend and I'm just a crazy little hooligan who's just trying to get through life, figure it out one day at a time. So
Welcome to the Vulnerability Babe podcast. And as you heard, Laura is amazing. She's a multifaceted, multidimensional. I feel like I need to brag a little bit about her. Is reminded just how awesome you are. And how your energy and spirit truly creates ripple effects. And you did that with me too when the first time we met.
oh, thank you so much. And I know I said it just before we started. I'm working on receiving compliments, so thank you very much. There are times that I definitely find it hard to hear something like that, to say that you want to brag about me. So I'm eternally grateful for you because from the moment that we connected, you've always created that safe space. You've always created a space where I could really just turn up how I am, who I am, regardless of how I'm feeling that day, what I've gone through. And you carry this inner peace within yourself. And I think it just radiates out of you. So it just makes people feel safe to share their stories. And I'm so grateful for that because, we need to have the chit chats about what life throws at us, what we take away from it, just so we can both
Yeah.
learn from each other and grow and do all the things.
Especially in this time and space is very much needed, and that's exactly what this community is for us to just be ourselves, for inner children to feel safe and free and just have some girl chat, some yap in the vortex where we feel like we can just be ourselves and share what are the downloads that have been coming up for us? What are the lessons that have been coming up? Have we been celebrating? What have we been grieving? What have we been feeling? And not be ashamed of that, because I feel as though that this time and space is that feeling is where we're going to grow and heal and evolve, no longer resisting that.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, because I was even saying it to you earlier, like 2024, like even you saying grieving, that like 2024 just like caught me by the ankles and dragged me through the year, just dragged. Do you know what I mean? And it's just I came out with all like bushes and everything in my hair because it was a year and a half. And it's one of those things that, there is a part of you that you almost have to grieve because your experiences change you. And like you're still you. You can still be the kind, compassionate, understanding person, but
Mhm.
you do view things slightly differently. You do look at things in a way that you probably haven't before, or look at people in a different light, or discover something about yourself that, transforms you, whether that's in a positive way, a negative way. And it really is, I suppose, down to you, how you cope with it, how you manage it, how, you receive the energy from the experiences that you had. And yeah, 2024 was like, well, you need more experiences to learn, Mrs. Don't think life is all sunshine and roses.
Mm-mm. I feel you on that. I really feel you. However, here we are. We've
Mhm.
transmuted it, and I know that we're still, I've been calling it spiral training to become spiral masters, where it's like we're in the middle of it, we're like, whoa, what's going
Yeah,
on?
I
And
love that.
so I've been calling it spiral training. We've been going through spiral training, and look at us. We've gotten we've gotten so much more skills and so much more
Mm.
insight through that training.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's exactly what it is. Like I was even thinking about this the other day. There was a comment that a friend of mine made to me. And
Mm.
like again, people say things and they don't realize what they're saying. They don't mean it with malintent. But at the
Mm.
time I was like, ow, that hurt. But
Mm.
okay, I'm just gonna keep that happy face. But it was basically someone had asked her, oh, what's Laura up to these days or what's she up to? And she was like, oh, God only knows what she's doing these days. I can't keep up with her.
Mm.
And in such a way that like, oh, this girl can't make up her mind what she's doing with life, what she's working as, where she's working and all the different things. And I'm like, in a way, it did make me feel belittled and,
Mm.
just all those negative feelings that come with when people almost talk down to you because it seems like you don't have your life figured out.
Mm-hmm.
And I
And who
understand why
does?
people, do
Who
you know what
does?
I mean? Like, I mean, look, if I ever get my life together, it will be a great day in the parish. I'm telling you here now. People will know. There'll be signs,
There
there'll
will
be
be
unicorns
signs.
outside somewhere.
I feel like the biggest sign would also be like we would be not here and we would be either very, 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 very bored because we'd be like, okay, and then now what?
Yes, exactly. Because I was even thinking, right? So this comment popped up into my brain there recently, and I was like, am I a bit all over the place? Am I a bit messy? And I'm like, no, everything I've gone through, every type of job I've tried to do, every, career I've tried to start, whether, with So Lovely, I had it as a brand, a product based brand. And like, again, my intentions were pure with that. And like, look, that didn't take off
Mm,
and I lost my passion for it. But I've also learned things along the way, like what's for
yes.
me, what's not. I did, like, there was so many things that I've done, different jobs I've gone into and left. And I think as I get older, my physical body will tell me so much quicker. Because, when you're young, you're told, I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but over here, you're told, oh, toughen up. You're
Mm,
grand, get on with it. Just get on with it. Head
mhm.
down, push through. And that's fine. It does build character in a way. It does, make you strong in a way, but it doesn't
But
bring
it's not the
much
only
joy.
way.
Exactly. It doesn't bring much joy or happiness. And um, like I worked for the family business for
Mm,
years and I was unhappy and I just couldn't understand how the rest of my siblings all just thrived in that environment, in that atmosphere. And for years I like literally during work I would try plan business I could start myself, one that I understood and
mm.
was happy in. And whenever I bring it up to family members, they would almost get like, okay, whatever, because they were like, why is she, it's almost like she was being ungrateful. And it's not that I was being
Mm.
ungrateful. I was very grateful that there was a job and an income. But the day that that went, where did that leave me? With all these hopes and dreams and no way to figure out how to do them
Your
because,
energy was not being fulfilled. And that's not
no,
something to feel guilty about at all.
no. And I didn't know who I was because I always put myself in like the box of I'll just go work for the family business and earn money that way and live my life that way. But
Mm.
even doing that, I wasn't experiencing life. Like I wasn't traveling, I wasn't doing anything. It was very stagnant. So when that business did close, and now and like everything was taken away from me essentially, like money, whatever else, my family was going through this horrendous time. This is years and years ago. I just
Yeah.
remember being, well, like, what do I have to offer to people? Because now people want me to go do a job for them, and I don't have the safety
Mm.
net of, well, it's a family business. If I mess up, I'll get given out to, but I'll still have a job. Like no one's going to fire me, do you know?
Mm.
And since then, yes, I've dabbled in different things, and I've done, I did the academy with you, and I was a coach for a while, and I did my podcast, and I know I'm coming back into that, but all that being said is like I had to take the time to learn what resonates with me, who I really am, because for a long time I followed the social norm
Yeah.
and it didn't bring me much joy. It didn't bring me much happiness. It brought me a lot of stress. My anxiety got really bad to the point where I couldn't leave the house.
Mm.
Um, do you know, like it builds and builds. So now
Yeah.
as I get older, now I'm in
What you
my
resist
30s.
persists.
Exactly. It doesn't go away. So there's been a couple of instances over last year where I had to walk away from jobs that I was doing in people. And again, the people who are involved, I always say this, it's not that they were inherently bad people. It's that the environment that I was in and that they may have creating work-wise was
Mm-hmm.
not for me. Because again, I've seen these people with their kids, I've seen these people with other people. I see that they are good people. You know,
Yeah,
I obviously wouldn't have hung around that long if I didn't, but like, unfortunately, the way that they operate when they work did not align to who I am.
period.
And
Period. And then that doesn't need any more explanation. I feel
there
as
you go.
though a lot of times, especially as women, we want to justify why things are not aligned in order to say, well, I know this not, is not a bad opportunity, person, place, inherently, all these different things. But if it's just not aligned, then it's not aligned. And
Mhm,
the greatest gift that you can give yourself is one, you were aware of that, gave yourself the time to reflect and be
mhm,
aware of that, to admit it, and then gave yourself the gift of letting go of that expectation to put it together, to make it work, to push through and go with the norm as you were
mhm.
taught, because that wasn't what your energy was telling you that was aligned. You followed
Yeah,
your energy.
yeah. And like, and don't get me wrong, these were situations where my anxiety was through the roof. I was like, I literally was like spiraling downward again. My depression had kicked
Mm,
off and everything like this. And like even having those, and I'm not a confrontational person, but like unfortunately they came to conversations where you did have to confront the situation.
mm,
And it really threw me. Like one was a little bit of a surprise, and the other I just could see it wasn't going to. Not everyone gels when they work together.
mm,
Not everyone gets along. Not everyone understands each other. And you're going to meet people who you're not going to work well with. You know what I mean?
mm,
Like, not everyone likes me. That's fine. And you
mm.
kind of, it's almost like what Mel Robbins says. You have to kind of let people think what they think.
Yeah.
Because again, it comes back to we try to justify ourselves. We try to explain ourselves. We try to, you know, get our side across. And I'm like, it came to a point where like this, I could talk about my point of view till the cows come home.
Yes,
They're not going to under,
that
they're not going to
reminds
understand it.
I love that analogy because it also reminds me of like if you're wearing a pair of glasses that sees things in one color and the other person sees it in another color, you can both be yelling until you're blue and like trying to convince and persuade each other. They're like, no, the world is this color, and they're like, it's this color. You both are right, but you just don't see the same glasses, and maybe it's just time to
Hmm.
not try to take off the glasses and just walk and find other people who sees the world the same way, or that feels more aligned, not having to
Yeah,
force someone else to change who they are and vice versa, change who you are.
exactly. Because even something that I've had to work on. So I have this whole thing with like rejection and failure, and I've been working on it for years and years. And like that is always going to be something that I will continue to grow in. And like if I was to tell anyone any piece of advice is go out there and fail, fail and fail and fail,
Oh
because when
yes.
you learn, when you've realized that they're not necessarily failures, that they're lessons. I know that's so cheesy and so cliche to say because you hear it all the time. But it really, truly, if something fails, you learn more about yourself in that failure than you realize if you take the time for introspection. But something that I've learned is that when like people are kind of criticizing me,
Mm,
um, whether it be work-wise, personally, whatever it is, I used to just straight away get so defensive. So
mm.
wall goes up like, mm-mm. But I had to learn to listen. I'm like, okay, well, they obviously have a point. They
I
obviously are
get
seeing
it. It's
something
the
or something.
Taurus. It's the Taurus in us. I get it. The
Has to
horns
be in
come
there
up.
somewhere. But well, I have Aries in my chart,
Oh no.
so I'm like really like not not today. But I've worked really hard to listen and be
Yeah.
like, okay, well, maybe they have a point, and I just need to do a bit of introspection and see, like, let me put myself in their shoes, as a friend, as a business owner, as just a person in everyday life. Let me just put
Mm,
myself in their shoes because I honestly don't know what's going on in their life. They don't know what's going on in mine.
mm,
And there's probably reasons behind why they're saying, speaking, acting a certain way. And I realized there was just one situation in particular. It came down to like this communication where I was being told, when I got the job, it was all about like I had to be communication had to be like on point. And for
mm,
me, I really did feel that my communication was good, that I always asked.
mm,
And, I always asked the questions I needed. I did what I was told to do. But the more I reflected on the situation, a lot was being put on me because there was a day where I was like, okay, she's saying communication, she's saying this. Let me write down a list of things that, they see as my day-to-day tasks.
okay.
And I see like what I have been doing. This is like I go in, these are my standard working procedures. This is what I'm getting accomplished today. And I went to go, and I started that conversation again. This is like so out of my realm to confront this issue myself. And I said, let me just have this conversation. And oh, this had me so wound. And I just said, hey, look, I feel like we kind of didn't, that you're not happy right now.
Mm,
That's not my intention. I just wanted to get clear. This is what I believe is what you're looking from me. And
mm.
unfortunately, that person didn't want to hear it. They kept saying, well, we won't reflect on the past. We won't reflect on the past. We'll just move forward.
That's
I don't,
interesting because you were in that scenario initiating conversation and communication. And
exactly. But the person on the other end wasn't at the point of listening.
mm,
Listening is a key point of conversation because this conversation came up again. And I was trying to outline, like, hey, if you had an issue earlier or you felt like something wasn't getting accomplished and I didn't realize, you need to let me know. You need to pick up the phone. And then I'm told, well, I didn't want to micromanage. I didn't want to do this.
mhm,
I didn't want to blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I understand that, but as a business owner, if you want things done, and again, it's like my intention was never to create or start anything. It was never to do anything. And I realized I
I
had
can
to
see
walk
that
away.
too. I can see that.
Yeah, I had to walk away because the way I communicate is so different to how they communicated. And again, that doesn't make them wrong. It doesn't make them, these terrible people. It's just we were two people who weren't going to work well together. And
Mhm,
like even their personality was a little bit more direct. And I'm a bit like I'll
mhm,
talk around my points so I'm not hurting any feelings. You know what I mean? Like I'm
mhm.
very much like let me not start anything because I hate confrontation. Whereas as a business owner for them, because it's their livelihood, they have to
Yeah.
get, sorry, I don't know if I can curse, but they have to get shit done,
Yes.
you know? And I have to respect that. And that's fine. This is their business. This is their livelihood. They support their kids. And they've done fantastically well. And I wish them all the best. But I'm also like, I kind of just have to say, look, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
And I could have kept turning up just for the money and whatever else. But how every day I have to come home and cry to myself in my pillow that I'm miserable and then I'm not taking any action.
Wow.
My body is physically reacting again. Am I going to ignore it
Wow.
for, how much long am I going to ignore it for? Um,
It was really affecting you in a really deep in different levels.
oh, so much because I am a person, and you see, this is the difference between people, is I am a person who takes everything very personally. So if
Mhm,
you think I'm not doing a good job, if you think I'm not accomplishing tasks that you think I'm supposed to be doing, and if I can't communicate with you,
mhm,
well, my brain goes straight to, well, you just hate me, I'm useless, I'm not good enough. All these
mhm,
limiting beliefs just like flood back into my brain. And
mhm,
a lot of people will tell me, and they have told me, you can't take everything so personally. Well, I can because
mhm,
that's who I am, but I can
mhm,
also receive the information. And again, it comes down to managing it and having my little tools, my techniques to go, is this something I want to believe? Is this a thought, a frame of mind that I'm going to catch
mhm.
and flip it on its head? This is something that keeps coming up.
Yeah.
So am I going to keep bearing, like, shoving it down, or am I going to go, okay, this really affects me. I am a person who's going to take everything personally. That's who I am. And even that, even though I am that type of person, I've found my partner in life. I've found
Mhm.
really great friends, I've made connections. So
I
again,
want
it
to
comes down.
reframe that just a slight bit.
Mhm.
Because you are that type of person, not even though, because you are who you are, you
Exactly.
found your
Even
partner.
better. Even
Because of all the traits and all that makes up you, Laura, you
Mhm.
decided to stop abandoning yourself, listen to yourself, and give yourself the gift of this is not a line for me and does not have to mean anything about anyone apart from the fact that it doesn't align with you.
Exactly. Like, exactly. Again, it doesn't mean that, because I think a lot of times when it comes to confrontation, it stems from not learning how to resolve confrontations
Mm,
as a child, depending on how you grew up and things. And I was always someone who just shied away from it. I shied away
mm.
from anyone getting cross at me, or, if I did anything wrong, I'd be like, no, why? I would just
I,
feel it so deeply. And it's just who I am. I just feel really deeply. And I
of
wish I
course,
could.
I know that. And I wanted to just point out that you said that as a child, confrontation wasn't your biggest suit. However, I feel like let's also reframe that to communication, you know? And in that instance, you had the courage to want to communicate, to confront what was feeling uneasy within you and building up in order to build a bridge. And
Mhm.
unfortunately that bridge was not built. However, you were able to be like, okay, I don't have to keep trying to build it in my part when the other person does not want to build, or maybe they just didn't have the same vision for that bridge, and
Exactly. And
you
and
did
that's the thing.
that.
It's the way you phrase that is so good. Like my vision, or like how I perceive things, again, their one is so different. Like you saying with the glasses and everything. And I remember when this confrontation did happen, there was another one that happened again. And like in this particular one, my body started reacting to it. So I was like,
Mm.
oh no. And like when my body starts to shake and the tears come, and it's like,
Can you
I
go a
know
little
I
bit
can.
deeper for the listeners who are they're resonating with this, and I feel like a part of me, I can hear them, and also a part of me, like, I get that. What does that mean? Because a lot of people just want to either, oh, these feelings are bad, I don't want to feel it, I want to push it away, I have different reaction to the feelings, but with you, you were allowing yourself. So how did you get yourself to that point to allow yourself to even observe those feelings?
So initially, when this confrontation was happening, right, I would say that I didn't quite allow myself to feel them. I was very much in the moment trying to keep it together to have this conversation
Mm,
because, a lot of times people don't know what to do when people cry. They don't understand anxiety. They don't understand when anxiety attacks hit. They don't know what to do.
mm-hmm,
Um, and and that's not on them to know. That's a me thing. That's for me to manage. And I came away from that conversation like really upset with myself, feeling a lot of shame, a lot of guilt.
mm,
Um, I remember, sending a voice note to my friend because at the time, my fiance, he was working over in Switzerland.
mm,
So like I had no one close by, and I sent a voice note to my friend, like, why am I this way? Like, why the fuck does my body have to start reacting? Because once
mm,
it starts doing this, and I went down that spiral. I
yeah.
did because I was like that for a while. And, I have a really great support system in that friend where she gives me the space to talk about it. So having that space, one, was amazing because for me, it would have been like, well, I'm crap, I'm shit, I'm never going to be good
Mm.
enough, stupid. Like, I had all this shame, like,
It was
so
great
much.
to have that outside perspective.
She was coming in going, Laura, you a few years ago wouldn't have even turned back up to that job. She was like, you would still be in
Wow.
your house. You would never have said those things. She gave me that different perspective, like what you said. Like, and then it took me, now I'm not gonna lie, it took me a few weeks for me to go, I actually have, there's been a lot of growth.
Yeah.
I did like you said, have the courage to go and try communicate. It didn't
Mm-hmm.
work out. Um, but I shouldn't feel shame. Like I kind of looked at myself as well, like looking back at even that girl 2 weeks ago, as a younger version of myself. And I'm like, would I talk to really little Laura like that when she was having panic attacks and no one knew what was going on? Or would I be more kind and gentle with her? So I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that girl, she had a moment. Not that
Mm-hmm.
to me it wasn't the ideal moment. It happened. There's nothing I can change about that now. So I'm not going to dwell on things that I can't control. But what I am going to do is go, fair dues to you. You tried. You fucking
Yes, you
tried.
tried.
And
And that's what happens when we fail. We try and we fail and we try. And it goes back to your remark earlier about go out and fail, fail, fail. And that's
hmm
what it is. You try to communicate, build a bridge. It failed, but you
hmm
tried. Did it really fail? Because you
that
took
bridge
out,
came tumbling down.
right? You had different reactions and learned how to react differently with the tools that you do have, and then you can go forward with, okay, what tools did I learn from that interaction, that
Yes.
feeling? And it's like the concept that we're going to reach this magical place where we're just gonna come out the victor and we're never ever going to fail. Like
hmm
that's what makes the victor. They fail and they fail and they
Yep.
failed and they tried and they failed and they're like, maybe I'm just gonna stay down here forever.
hmm
Actually, okay, I'm gonna try again. And I try.
Yeah. And like, look, don't get me wrong, constantly having to come back to these lessons that we have to learn is so tiresome. And I think that's why
Mm-hmm.
I had to take a step away from like the manifesting world, the spiritual world. And I know
Mm-hmm.
you never really leave it because it's like you're literally on a vibration. But I couldn't hear it. I couldn't receive the information people were putting out. And
Mm-hmm.
I just, I wasn't doing my usual things. I wasn't journaling. I wasn't doing any of that. And I was like, I'm too tired. Like I felt like I was trying and trying. And I just felt too tired. I just
Oh,
felt like I had like burnout from it.
and I
Um,
feel like I don't mean to cut it off, but I feel so aligned to that because I feel that we forget that part of the healing, part of the process. If you've been a warrior and you've been in battle and been going through this journey and all these different uh, battles and whatnot, in some time that warrior needs to recover, needs to reflect
mhm,
on the journeys, needs to reflect on the battles and tend to the wounds and the scars, and at the same time celebrate the wins. And we forget, we're just like, I just need to be in the journey and just keep going, and if I'm not on that journey, then I'm not a warrior. It's like you've been in the journey,
mhm.
and part of the journey is like, hey, let's go to a little tavern and just relax, enjoy, drink, dance, be merry, be like,
Yeah,
share your stories about what you've been through and hear other
yeah,
stories as well so that you know that you weren't alone.
yes, yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what, when you're going through all this, like hardship, say, is you forget to just take the time for you. And
Mm-hmm.
not the time, and don't get me wrong, I love a good movie or binge watching a program or just I go doom scrolling on TikTok. But also it is so important to just like get out of my house, out of my environment, feel different energy, shift it up a bit. Like
Yeah.
I know I'm Irish, but like going out and drinking isn't like my number one thing, believe it or not. Like it's not like yes, I like a good girls' night out like anybody else, but my thing like that I love is like going for a walk with one of the dogs.
Yes.
I say one of the dogs because I have five of them, and to walk them all is not relaxing or peaceful. So I even stopped going to yoga classes like for myself, not to teach, but to yoga classes for myself. And this year I found a yoga class that's close by that I'm going to. I found a Pilates class that I'm going to. Like I'm finally doing things that, fill my cup again rather than
Yeah.
just constantly dealing with the struggles. Like, because you just get so consumed by it. That's what last year felt like. It was like one knock after another
Oh,
after another. I'm like, I
oh,
felt like I
girl.
just picked myself back up. It's like,
Girl, you were
geez,
you were being dragged. I was being dragged right next to you. That's another time we can talk about it. But yes, girl, I was just
Yeah,
like the sticks and rocks and
yeah,
everything were just like yes.
yeah. It was a literal shit show at one stage. I was like, oh geez, like what else? Like what else
So now we
can
need to
life
take
throw at
we need
me?
to take a shower, take a bath,
Mm,
like take out all that grime that we've been through and feel like
yeah.
we've been through a lot, and have
Yes.
some hot cocoa and just sip and just be like we can relax
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
allow ourselves not to feel shame for needing that
Mhm.
because
Yeah, like there is a lot. There are so many people who will have their opinions, who will be like, you have to get out and work. And this is a really old Irish thing as well. You work till you break, and I
yeah.
don't know if that's the same with you guys, but the old Irish
Corporate
way was,
America is pretty much that way too.
yeah, like the old Irish way is like work till your legs fall off type of thing.
Oh yeah.
And they have you, it's always like toughen up. You have to be hardier. You have to, you'll be grand. Like push everything away, push everything down, bullhead your way through almost.
Mhm.
And
You
look, that
couldn't do
probably,
that to yourself anymore. We can't do that to ourselves because then we're abandoning ourselves. Just
yeah,
like you were
and
going back to.
see,
I just wanted to say how the comparison between you and your siblings. How why couldn't you push through and find that alignment in the business as they had? It's because you have a different current that you're operating from. I
Mhm.
feel like energy is currency. So we're
Yeah,
having our own flow, and you no longer can deny that flow within you, no matter if someone says that she is a wild card or whatnot. Because I mean,
hmm
we talked about our inner children before, and your inner child. And she's still very lively. She's very lively. She's a firecracker, and she's just like
hmm
she's not gonna let you do what doesn't feel good to you and her because she's
yeah,
like,
no,
we are going where we want to go, even if it comes to other people looking at us and being like, she's what is going on with Laura?
yeah,
It's like everything's going on with me, and I love it.
yes. Honestly, my inner child, she is. I feel like sometimes like the opposite of me, but she is Miss Sassy Pants. She has an attitude, and she is not here for this bullshit of, just continuing on for continuing on's sake, and we've
Yes.
talked about it before. And I think that's why for so long, I wore this mask. For so long, I had anxiety bubbling under there, but I always had to go figure it out. I was always told I was too sensitive. I was always
Mhm.
told, crying, stop doing this. And I'm like, I wish I could, guys. If you just said it to me, I wish I could do that. But like, but
Do
you
you
get to,
know the inner child within me and the energy and the power that she holds? I cannot not tell her. I
no,
cannot tell her that she's not important anymore.
no,
That's what you're
because
telling. You're
yeah,
telling
because
her she's important.
when you're wearing that mask and you're just getting like just head down, keep going, do the best you can type thing.
Oh, yeah.
When you take it off once, it cracks. You take it off and you try to do the same thing again, you cracked it, so now you're going to break even sooner. And that's what's happening to me as an adult. Like I physically, like I tell people, like I can't explain it, but like my whole body, I cannot hide it anymore. I used to be able to like squeeze my hands or like, you'll find me doing this sometimes with my if I have just a little bit of extra anxiety within me, I'll like twiddle or mess with my fingers or something. But if it's something that is pushing me too far and like my whole being is telling me, no, this is not for you, I have no choice. Don't get me
I
wrong.
love it though. I love it. You're
There are
literally.
situations where it's fear rather than anxiety. So I do have to discern,
Mm,
am I doing this out of fear based that I'm going
mm.
to fail? Or is this something like within me that is telling me, like my intuition is telling me, no, this is not for you?
Some listeners might be wondering, okay, how can I tell the difference within my body with anxiety and fear? and my intuition, how do I tell the difference between fear and intuition?
Really, really good question. I don't have a fucking clue because I'm still learning how to pick up on it sooner rather than later. So again, it comes
Mhm.
back to sometimes I I do it because I don't want to like there's a part of me that I don't want to fail. And I don't want my anxiety to control me either. So I
Mm,
push through. But I wish I had learned, I had listened sooner to my gut.
mm,
And something that's helped me a little bit is being a yoga teacher. So
mm.
last year I became a yoga teacher. And
Yay! I'm celebrating that. Let's take a moment for that.
one thing I took away from 2024 is I became a yoga teacher. But honestly, I hadn't been practicing yoga very long before I did this. The way the course all came up was divinely aligned in some
Mhm,
regard. And it was a blessing in disguise. But lately I've been realizing, and this is me getting back into going to classes for myself and everything, is, in my meditations and even like when people step onto their mats, when they come to my class,
mm,
it's always like I do a full body scan. I'm like, I want you just to check in from the crown of your head, working down through your face, your
mhm,
shoulders, everything, from the crown of your head to your toes. How does your body feel? We just notice. We don't change anything. We're just noticing for right now. Connect into your breath. What's your breath doing? Are you taking, you know, short, shallow breaths, which can be an indication that you're carrying stress or anxiety from the day around with you, or
mm,
your breath nice and deep and, kind of has a natural flow to it. And then you
mhm,
check in with your mind. Is your mind racing at a mile a minute, or are you here present in the moment? And
mm.
for me, anxiety, when I connect, take that moment to connect to my body, my breath, everything, and I think of a situation, anxiety normally starts like tensing my shoulders, everything kind of curls inward. So it's like a really connection to my body that I can feel. And fear is more like, oh, I really don't want to do this. It's more of a
Mm,
thought. It's more of my brain is leading the way rather than my body. Don't get me wrong, I can feel fear in my body too, but
mhm,
um, for me, anxiety, I really feel it like in my core, like in my whole being. Whereas anxiety, I feel in my whole being. Whereas fear is like I'm talking myself out of situations.
mhm.
Like I'm already saying, well, you're going to fail at that, so let's not go down that road. So that works for me. That's how I discern, like, okay, yes, this is anxiety. This is something I need to listen to. And this is fear because I don't believe in myself enough.
Thank you for sharing that. And I wanted to point out how Laura said this is what works for her.
Mm,
So, how everyone is different, everyone is unique, but at the same time, we do share similarities. It is a practice to go within yourself, to allow yourself to feel the different feelings and how does that feel in your body.
mhm,
Because I know that for me, anxiety is also in my body, but I feel like it's almost like my throat closing up, and then and like a gut, like my gut being like twisted because I'm not following my gut to be open, and
mhm,
fear almost feels like that as well, but like also with my head and like a little almost like paralyzing. Um, so I just wanted to tell the listeners, remind the listeners that how it feels in your body may be different, but that's the beautiful thing. You get to explore how those emotions
mhm.
feel within your own body and not try to not feel it because that's why we came here. We get to feel those emotions.
And in the moment when you're trying to figure all this out as well, this is another thing. It's like in the moment when it's happening, you won't have a clue. You're like, is this
Mhm.
anxiety? Is this fear? You do have to go to that, like, whether it be like a moment of stillness at night or a moment in the morning where you just have a little reflection on it. And I know being still isn't for everyone as well, because I definitely
Mhm.
am one that struggles with being still, but I encourage people in my yoga class to be still. Um, I'm getting back to welcoming the stillness, that's for sure.
Mhm.
Um, but it's in those moments of reflection, of introspection, that you slowly start to know yourself better. So if I was, out doing something now, I wouldn't
Mhm.
be able to discern it straight away. I'd have to be like, wait, am I reacting to a situation that's causing fear, or is this like my gut telling me something different? Is this
Mhm.
anxiety-based reaction, or is this a fear-based reaction, to these kind of things.
Giving yourself
Um,
that time to reflect.
yeah, so I still don't have a clue in the moment. In the
Yes.
present moment, I still have to go back afterwards and reflect a bit. Um, and it's the only way I'm going to learn, and it takes practice. It takes practice to change the way I think. It takes practice to change how I view myself, and if I'm honest with myself, like I still struggle with self-worth and,
Mhm.
self-belief and all those things, but I'm determined to continue to work on it. If it's ever if I ever bring like life into this world myself, if that's for me and in my timeline, I want to make sure that I have the tools to build that self-worth and that self-belief in like these little minds, because
Mhm.
I do feel such a good like a good chunk of my responsibility within, say, my family is to break generational curses, is to break the old ways that are like, and don't get me wrong, like we say the old ways, but our parents are brought up in a way that they had to act to survive. Like that was how
Mhm.
they had to survive, and this is how I have to survive now. So
Mhm.
my children, if I ever have them, they're going to have to break certain generational things for me as
Yeah.
well. Like no one, by no means is anyone perfect, but it's just being like willing to be aware of those things, I think. Don't know if that makes sense,
Yes.
does
And I
it?
feel like when it comes to breaking generational curses, I want to also reframe that because there's in mass media there's like negative connotation to generational curses, and as you were saying, that's just a system of how they were learned to survive and to thrive, and then the system evolves. And
Mhm.
bringing back to sometimes the system or that bridge that got us here, going back to that bridge analogy, does not align to where we're going because we need to go to another bridge that will align us to where we need to go, same as like the systems that were has evolved, and we can't be like, well, we need to use this system because it doesn't mean that system was bad, it just
Mhm.
evolved. And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything bad about that bad other system, it just doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for us. Maybe it still works for other people, and that is great, but it doesn't work for the energy that we're flowing. The energy that we have needs another kind of system with different levers and whatnot to transport us to where we need to go. So I
Yeah.
wanted to ask for the listeners who are in this journey right now. We're always going to be in that in between and that learning. What are some things in your journey in the past and right now that has helped you to be grounded in this time frame of getting to that destination or enjoying this destination?
It's a really good question. There's a couple of things. Um, I think something that's really grounded me a lot because in, say, my journey with my anxiety and learning to deal with it and acknowledging that I have this anxiety. And again, I
Mhm.
don't necessarily, I know I talk a lot about it, but I just openly talk about it to let people know it's not a taboo topic anymore. Like you can
Mhm.
have it and still be like a phenomenal human.
Yes, I have
Um,
anxiety too.
like, do you know what I mean? And I just say about it because some people feel a bit of shame and guilt that they have it. And I
Yeah.
don't think you need to feel shame and guilt, but I do think you have to be self-aware that there are ways that you can help yourself yourself to do it. Because one thing that I think I used to do, that definitely kind of halted any progress I could make was I was always, going back to like, oh, why didn't like the adults around me, help me when I was younger? Why didn't they
Mm,
do X, Y, Z? And it comes back again to this generational thing. Well, they didn't have the information. Like,
mm,
honest, and I don't know if it's the same for you guys over in the States, but in Ireland, anxiety within kids, it wasn't heard of. Anxiety wasn't even really something you were supposed to talk about. It wasn't, you go, what is that? Do you know what I mean? So
yes.
if that knowledge wasn't there for my mom when
Mm,
I was growing up, how on earth was she supposed to help me?
mm-hmm.
She didn't have the knowledge base. She could only do with the tools that she was given. And even going back another generation, my grandmother came, and it's like, I suppose what helps me and why I'm going down this track is what's helped me ground into this is that understanding where I came from in a sense and why people act the way they did or why we did things a certain way that just doesn't align with me now is because
Mm-hmm.
this is their experiences. We have what we call the mother and baby homes, the laundries, where if you were pregnant before marriage, you were sent off to the laundries. But my that happened to my nanny where her family disowned her and sent her to this because we were so led by the Catholic Church back then
Mm-hmm.
that the priests would say they need to go. Like it's such a mortal sin for
Wow.
this to happen that they would send them to the laundries, is what we would call them, where like these women would wash all the stuff or whatever. But the horrendous things that happened, where babies were sold to rich families for people who didn't have it, and their babies were taken off of them, and families kind of almost turned their backs. They were abused. Everything happened here,
Mhm.
and it was places that were led by nuns and priests and different things. And my grandmother ended up in one of them. And so my grandmother really went through a lot. Now, thankfully, her situation was they were supposed to, my mum was supposed to be adopted out or sold out, whatever way they were going to do it. I don't know. We don't know that story. But my granddad happened to be so committed and so dedicated to my grandmother that he walked something crazy, like 37 miles or something, to go see her. And when she went into labor, they took the baby away because that was the normal thing to do, but the baby never
Mhm.
came back. So my granddad started going, where's the baby? And so he went through every room until he found my mother. And
Wow.
my nanny refused point blank to sign any papers giving up rights, even though her parents had done that. Saying that my granddad and nanny lived a fabulous like marriage and everything, but my nanny had certain issues then after when it came to like hormones, when it came to like
Mhm.
her health, she had to get her uterus out, her hormones were all over the place, it affected her mental health. And
Mhm.
her generation, mental health isn't talked about. So she's gone through all of this trauma. She's now like her body is essentially kind of not working with her because she's had 5 kids. They've had to take her womb out. There's no medicine wasn't picked up. So now the
Mhm.
family is now hiding mental health within their home. They're trying to keep it a secret. And my nanny was like not like she was so lovely. Like I used to go up to her after school and we'd have the chit chats and I miss her dearly to this day. Like I swear to God I loved her, but she had issues. And so my mom had to go through that and had to experience that as a child. So she came up with stuff that she's carried. But the
Mhm.
old ways was you just have to get on with it because again, mental health is hidden. You don't show it, that kind of way. And again, my mother is such a strong force to be reckoned with. She's gotten through some things like for our family, like issues with my dad and everything. And at this
Mhm.
point, my mother deserves a Nobel Peace Prize because to deal with us anyway. And then my poor dad, he has dementia, so she's his full-time carer, but like the loyalty
Mhm.
and the fierceness that she takes care of that man, like that this is her responsibility. But then you come into my generation, and I'm like, well, why didn't she do X, Y, Z? Well, I was like, if I look
Mhm.
back, look at what my grandmother went through. She got through it, but she had to do the best she could with her parents abandoning her.
Mhm.
My mom then, when my nanny wasn't well, had to step up to the plate and maybe
Yeah.
grow up quicker than what necessary. So she didn't even get a chance to learn about herself. So how can I expect adults in my life to have helped me with something they knew nothing about?
You're li-
So
you're living in a system right now that is designed for you, not designed for them. I was just thinking about your granny and your inner child, how like they both have that spunk because back in that day, it's like to go against the priests and the Catholic Church and what they wanted, and your granny and your grandpa were both like, no, this is our child.
Mhm.
Absolutely not. We're doing this our way. It was against the grain in itself back then. And
Exactly, exactly. Like our systems are so different. Back then, people wouldn't talk out. If you did, you were shipped off. If you
mhm,
went against the church, you were sent away. Like you were nearly,
it's
you
literally
know,
in your DNA to go against the grain. You're literally just following in
you
tradition.
know what I mean? In my mum's day, it was still a taboo thing to talk about mental health. And now I'm in my day, whereas people are advocates. People are
Hmm.
like shouting it from the rooftops. And yes, there's still this like taboo feeling around it sometimes, especially if you're new to it and stuff like that. But what's really helped me with and like realizing all of this, because before I'd be like, why didn't, my mom do this for me, or my dad do this, or
Hmm.
why didn't my sister do XYZ? It's because they hadn't got a fucking clue. They didn't know. So I realized what's really helped me ground myself now and understand myself better is like I have to kind of parent myself in a way. I
Hmm.
have to teach myself skills that the guy like people before me didn't have. Like this is on me as an adult, this is on me, and I have to make
Hmm.
this conscious choice that I am going to better myself for not only like my future kids, if that's for me later on in life or
Hmm.
whatever, but for other people I interact with on a day-to-day basis, on people who listen to your podcast, on for my friends, that like hopefully when if I, like we were saying earlier, if one person can, relate to this podcast in some way, that hopefully you have a ripple effect and it
Hmm.
changes, the trajectory of someone's life in some way, or betters it somehow, or just gives them a place of like inner knowing that they're not alone or something. So I think that has really, long story short, that's really helped ground me.
There's so
But
many
it's
gems
also,
within that story. So thank you for being so open to share a piece of your family history, which is
yeah, and
amazing.
I know my mom would probably hear it and she'll probably go, you didn't share that. And I'm like, Mammy, trust me, you came out the better half of that story, okay? Because you were the warriors who got through it. For a system that really didn't work well, because I even see it over with you guys over there in the States and what you're fighting at the moment. And,
Oh my gosh.
but again, I see so many people standing up for what's right. I know social media can be a really negative space, but equally you come across people who aren't afraid to call out bullshit, aren't afraid to like stand up for people, those in need. Like if my nanny had someone in her family to go, hey, this isn't right.
Hmm.
Like what the Catholic Church is doing here is wrong. It's immoral. It's not good. Like so many babies died because of that. And yet, for so many years, Ireland was consumed with like, you have to follow what the priests are telling you, but the priests weren't always on the right side of history either. Now, again, I'm not painting the Catholic Church with this like brush, like painting everyone with the same brush.
Hmm.
My mother is still a devout Christian, like, like she will not see it any other way. But that's because she wants to be morally good. So her intention is like, I want to live a good life. She wants to be respectful and kind and compassionate to other people.
Intention
She
is
wants to
always key.
always pure her intention. And she's a baby from the mother and baby homes that like we talk so
Hmm.
negatively about, but she doesn't care.
Yeah.
That's how she was raised, and she feels like the church gives her guidance on her, to be a good human. And that's what she's taken away from it. So like I'm not going to tell her that she's wrong, because she
Yeah.
also finds solace in that, in her religion and her faith. And like I still believe in God. I still have a faith. I still believe in, God, the angels and all the bits, but it's
Hmm.
just slightly different to what I was brought up in. But in
And that's
saying that,
okay.
exactly, and that's
Even
just
the
me
Bible
changing.
itself has gone through different interpretations throughout the years. So,
I even connected back to like um when I was doing yoga, I was like, God, a lot of what we do in yoga is similar kind of what you do to mass, that kind of way. Like, or like even just teachings, what they teach you.
mhm,
It's just you'd read books and stuff about yoga and you're like, whoa, that's really weird. Like the philosophy of yoga, I would say.
mhm.
And because my mom would often ask to, my mom wasn't so sure about yoga. She thought it was like something that you should be dabbling in, and she wasn't quite understanding what I was doing. And so when I explained it to her, I was like,
Give me a
Mom,
moment. Give me a moment.
I'm
Oh, Alexa, stop. Okay.
no, you're okay. But I
That
was,
that was the timer for my partner. It's
oh,
work.
sorry.
It's okay.
But no, I remember saying to mom, like, I'm not sitting there with my legs crossed and I'm floating in the air. Like, like it's
Yeah.
not what the church essentially has told you is bad. Like you learn a lot. Like it's another way I help ground myself is through yoga, through the breath work that I've learned through yoga. Um, like there's so many ways that I can release trauma in my body. And when I say trauma, it's not necessarily like bad, like extremely bad situational trauma. It's more like, I had a bad fall off of a horse and my body held on to trauma because it reacted
Mhm.
and tensed in a certain way. And so when I go to move a certain part of my body, you release that trauma. I
Mhm.
always say to my students, when you inhale, you're releasing stress and tension within your muscles. And then when you mindfully move your body and your shoulders, you're getting deep into those joints
Mhm.
and moving that as well. So any anxiety, anything that, has caused me trauma in my life, whether that been, physical like knocks or whatever, I used to do horse riding, whether that's the case or whether it is like just emotional things that I carried through life.
Mhm.
Um, I think, yoga has really helped me to realize like reconnecting to my breath. And I actually wrote down something because I thought it'd be really good to share because it's just something that when I came across this, I was like, dang, that really it hits home and it kind of gives you like a sense of peace. So if we have time, I'd
Mhm.
love to share it.
Yes, we can have this and share this message with the collective, and then we'll ask where can we find you afterwards. But I love this because every time I go to yoga at the end of the class, my instructors usually have like a phrase, a quote, or whatnot, and I feel as though this whole session where we just got to yap and our inner children got to play and express and whatnot has been a whole almost like a meditative yoga of rinsing out of all the different
Yes.
downloads.
Mm-hmm. And it's so funny you say rinsing out because yoga makes you move your body on different planes, right?
Hmm.
Um, so yes, it's a great form of exercise and movement for the body, but even to release that physical tension in the body by you do a load of twists. You move on
Hmm.
instead of because walking is like our main way we move, forward and back, but to move side to side, to do your twists, you're actually essentially rinsing the body because
Oh.
our toxins and everything are drained that way by squeezing the lymphatic system because it doesn't have a pulse of its own. And so you send it to different points in the body where toxins are drained from the body.
Mhm.
So
That's why
you're
you feel so
actually
good afterwards.
exactly. And like often people say that if you go in hungover to yoga and it's a yoga practice that's based with a load of twists, the hangover will be gone after because you're after squeeze, like literally rinsing the body of all the
I have
toxins
not
stuck in the
tried
night
that, but
before.
that'd be very interesting.
But yeah.
I could sometimes like yoga sober itself is a whole thing. Yoga hungover, wine and
Honestly,
yoga. Um, when it's aligned in the vortex, and I go to Ireland, maybe we can try that. Wine
yes.
and yoga.
Let's do it. Let's do it. But it's funny, yoga does wake up. Any exercise does, but I suppose yoga is so mind-body connection is that you
Mhm.
feel it more. Even in my gentle beginners class, people are like, dang it, I never knew how to move this way. And I'm like, I know, we have to get those neural pathways working again so that our body can move this way. Um, but I suppose this was just something that I prepared for one of my meditations, and it was just a little lesson that I wanted to bring the class at the end because I thought it was so important because we've talked about judgment and expectations, and I always when people step onto their mat, I say this is a place, a safe space for you to come to with zero judgment, no expectations, just meet your body where it's at. But then, like I said, we also connect to our breath. So I shared something, and I'm probably going to butcher the Sanskrit of this. So there are any
No,
yogis out
perfect.
there
Does not need to be
listening.
perfect.
You can correct my pronunciation, it's fine. But basically, it's called kumbhaka. And basically, what it is, it's when the breath pauses. So in yogic philosophy, the moment of stillness that happens at the top and at the bottom of the breath is actually quite significant because it's said that the pause between breaths is when the whole world can stand still. So essentially, what this is reflecting is the idea that in the space between breaths, whether at the top of an inhale or at the bottom of an exhale, there's a moment complete stillness where time feels suspended. In this state, one can experience a sense of unity, timelessness, and profound inner peace. So it just serves as a reminder that our breath is tied to the rhythm of life, and that pausing within can bring a deeper awareness of the present moment. So when you inhale, you take a big inhale in. So say you inhale for 4, 2, 3, 4, and you pause. Exhale for 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, pause. You create this inner stillness in yourself, you know? It's that
Mhm.
one moment where it stops and then you release it,
Yes, I feel it. Thank you so
you
much
know?
for your message, Laura, and your energy and your light. Where can the listeners and community find you in the vortex?
So people can find me on Instagram probably mainly. I share a little bit of yoga, more or less my dog's on the yoga mat when I'm trying to get down and do yoga myself, to be honest. So they can find me on Instagram at laura.lanigan.sll. Um, and then they can also find me on the So Lovely podcast. And lovely is spelled just a little bit different. It's Lovelee because it's after my nanny and granddad Lee, who were the grandparents I spoke about throughout this podcast.
Wow.
And it's kind of a nod to them to take, I always said, I think I've told you this before, Jovi, but I've always said like I was so blessed that I got two sets of parents because
Mhm.
my grandparents were really like a second set of parents to me. And so um, I've always felt so blessed that I got to experience them as parents as well as my own parents. So yeah, so it's kind of a nod to them to thank them for the lessons that they learned that they brought to me, but also for, fighting the good fight back when it wasn't that easy and still
Yes.
having all the love to give to their grandchildren, after everything. So I'm just so eternally grateful to them, and they'll always be a big part of who I am walking forward. I always take them with me. So yeah, that's where people can find me.
Thank you so much, Laura. And I'm also thank your ancestors, your granny and your grandpa and your mom and everybody that has just paved the way for you to be here, and also taking into account my ancestors and everybody that
Hmm.
paved the way for us to be here and go forward with the tools that they've learned, bring that, and we're going to hone them, make it even better, and then continue on with our journey with having rest and celebrating in our toolbox.
Yes. I want to celebrate you as well for, stepping back into your power, for getting back on this podcast, because again, you know, the world needs it. The world needs this space to be able to share their story, to hear other stories, to just step into who they are and be authentically them. I probably cursed once or twice in this podcast, and
That's
honestly,
okay. That is okay.
that's just where I'm at in my
That's
life.
where we're at, and that's the Vulnerability Babe podcast for you. We are here, we are
Amen.
vulnerable, and that does not mean that we are perfect. That means we come with all the
This is
different
it.
facets of our personalities and all the
This
different
is it.
personalities that come with it.
So I want to celebrate you for creating this space, for creating such a wonderful, beautiful podcast, and just being authentically you and just stepping into your power because Jovi, you are amazing and you bring so much joy to this world. So thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate you. And thank you again, everybody. You can find Laura at So Lovely Podcast and Laura.Lanigan at Instagram. And this is the Vulnerability Babe podcast. Again, thank you so much, Laura. I love
Thank
you.
you. I love you too.
Bye.